Hi class, this is a little PowerPoint audio presentation to try to get us up to speed on where we are in class and consumer behavior and to try to make sense out of the information that we've covered so far. I'm doing this to try to give you a certain amount of direction for your next round of presentations in class. I wasn't really pleased with the caliber of the presentations last time for a couple of different reasons. There was one that was good, one that was okay, and two that I'd say are subpar. And what makes uh, the weak ones weak is just preparation. So in these next ones, I want to see people stand up with a command of the material and relate it back to practical applications through example. And hopefully this will help you kind of get focused in that respect. So Angie wasn't there when I did this with Tiffany. When I asked Tiffany in a mock job interview what was the most important thing to ask or to respond to when she was asked, if she were asked, is this a good ad or a bad ad? I think in real life that's an important question, because what I see in class when you first start marketing classes is that people jump to ideas about how to promote something. Let's do this, let's do that, let's run an ad that does this or that, with no explanation or basis for why they're proposing that. Yeah, let's stick this in a package of gum, and it's an explanation of what our product service is. Well, that's fine if your product or service is used by gum users. Otherwise, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And even then, it would have to be gum chewers that might have an interest in your particular product. So by the time you leave this class, and for those of you that take promotions, I don't want you to do that. I want you to have a calculated view of how you assess a situation and some kind of prescriptive rationale for what it is you're proposing. So, as I said in the situation with Tiffany, the first thing that you want to ask before you run a promotional campaign or you develop an ad is, who is my customer? I mean, that's the most fundamental question. Who is it that's using my product or service? Yes, you want to know what your product or service is too, but you want to know the connection between that product or service and your existing or intended customer. The next question that you would ask in that mock interview, relating it back to that, is this a good ad or a bad ad, would be, what am I trying to accomplish with this promotion? And I'll get into that in a minute, but different promotions and different ads are intended to do different things, depending again on who the customer is, what their motivation is, what their perceptions are, their cultural background. There's all kinds of things that can influence an ad or an ad campaign, and ultimately what you want to accomplish as a consequence with that ad or that ad campaign. This relates back to number 1 and 2. What are the best venues to respond to the answer to who's my customer and what am I trying to accomplish? So venues could be social media, it could be magazines of different kinds, newspapers, radio, all those choices that you have. You know, what are the best ones to use to reach your intended customer and accomplish what it is you're trying to do with this particular promotion? And then the fourth question would be, what are the appropriate messages per the venue, or what is the information that you want to pass on, or that you want to pass on? So, as far as who's my customer, there's just a lot of information that uh, you want to have in place to answer that question. The easy stuff is stuff that you learned in 312, like what are some of the demographic definers as far as age, gender, religion, income, education, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And also, what are some of the psychological definers? What are some personality traits, for example? Are these, is this a rational group of customers? Are they emotional? Uh, so on and so forth. What are the, how do they relate to my product or service? What are the needs that I'm meeting? How do they see it? How do they interact with it? That's important, really important for different kinds of products, like a laptop computer or something like that, but an automobile or even a particular college. Are these needs functional or are they psychological? Think back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and think about an education. Am I concerned if we're running an ad for EOU with functional and psychological and or psychological? Yes, it's both. And I would stop and say that at this point, um, and I tried to make this point in class, that the book it's a bunch of chapters on a bunch of different takes around consumer behavior, because it's not one thing, it's a combination of things. Sometimes it work completely and totally independently, but usually in tandem with one another. So when you're going through this, there's oftentimes many factors at play, which is why you should go through this process of saying, who's my customer, what is it that I'm trying to accomplish, so on and so forth. So picking on that again, is there a particular personality or personality type that's at play here? Um, are these guys visualizers, verbalizers? Are there various personalities at play, like overachievers or achievers, believers, so on and so forth? That would go back, that particular one, to vowels. There's different tools that have been put in place to give you information around these things to aid you in your process of not just evaluating them, but giving you direction on how to communicate with them. What's motivating this buyer or user? Sometimes it's complex, sometimes it's simple. I'm hungry, I want to grab a bite. Or sometimes it's more um, cerebral than that, like I'm buying a car, I want something that reflects my personality, that may be conscious or unconscious. Uh, I'm selecting a school to go to. And then that could drive whether or not your messaging is affective, emotional, or cognitive, for example. What is the perception of this customer, if any, to my product or service? How do they view it? Do they view me as a cheap alternative, a quality alternative? Uh, can I leverage it, or do I want to change it? In other words, is this an attitude or a perception that I can influence and try to modify, or can I capitalize somehow on it? What is it that I'm trying to do here? And what are some factors that might have molded this buyer, like family, culture, gender, religion, social class, etc.? So again, there's a whole bunch of questions that you would ask when you look, if somebody says, is this a good ad or a bad ad? The whole point of the text and understanding consumer behavior is to go through a process of analysis. Um, and you may not remember all the different theories at play. You don't have to. Uh, and I won't test you on those theories. What I'll test you on is if you go through the text, you'll note that here's a chapter on consumer motivation and personality. Here's a chapter on consumer perception. Understand, and then the text gives you theories that studies slices of those things. But what's important is at the end of the day or the end of the course is to be able to, in your mind, go back and say, okay, well, I know consumer perception is important. Um, why is it important? How is it important? How can I integrate it into my ad if I believe I need to? So graphs and figures can help. I threw a couple of these in because, again, the book is linear, but the process is holistic. You know, you've got to be able to put these things together uh, collectively as a tool to ultimately, next course, promotions, if you take it, how to put together a promotional campaign. And again, I get really PO'd when people just pull ideas out of nowhere or some part of their anatomy and say, well, let's do this or let's do that without having gone through any kind of process whatsoever, so that if you do in fact succeed, it's by accident rather than design. And so this whole process is intended to ultimately design a promotional campaign that has basis and is likely to effect the desired change that you're interested in. So this would go down to visualizers and verbalizers. I'm talking to you, but I want you to see at the same time what it is I'm trying to explain. Here are some other ways of viewing it. I would encourage you to put these on pause and take a look at them. So, next question. What am I trying to accomplish with this ad? We advertise for different reasons, or we promote for different reasons. We promote sometimes, if you think back to the product life cycle that you should have learned about in 312 and hopefully are still thinking about or understand. A product goes through a product life cycle. It's just one tool, by the way. It's not a panacea for all kinds of promotions, but it has application in some instances. So a product goes through a product life cycle. You introduce it, you inform. Your objective or challenge is to get people to try it, to know about it, and to try it. Uh, that's an issue still with EOU at Mount Hood Community College because every year we lose 60% of our students probably. So you have this new group coming in, either through the graduation or attrition. So you have this new group coming in that don't know that you're there. And so you have this challenge to get in front of them, and there's different ways to do that, inform them that you're here and to try to get them to come up and have a conversation. Uh, but that can apply to a lot of different kinds of businesses as well. So get to try them. We give samples. Drive to action. We do coupons. We have sales. We do uh, some stuff to motivate people, like we have a clearance sale, or we say sale ends in 5 days. I mean, there's a TV on sale by Vizio at Costco. Um, it's funny. I it went on sale. It's a 75 incher. Went on sale for $999.95. The middle of December. I'm sorry, the middle of January approximately, and there was a 2 week deadline on it. The whole issue, it turned out, they told me, was to try to sell big TVs before the Super Bowl. There's a real rush on TVs for the Super Bowl. Well, I see they have continually moved out that date. There's still a bunch of them in inventory in the store, and every time I've gone into Costco, this is the one down by the airport, they've bumped that date out a week. So it's still on sale because they haven't moved them, but they're still not treating it as their everyday price. They're still trying to convince you, if you haven't been paying attention, that you have to act quickly, or the opportunity is going to go away. So we do different things for different reasons. We compare, we remind people, the got milk in the decline stage of the product life cycle. Rarely are we necessarily just concerned with purchasing. We advertise for lots of different reasons other than to just get people to buy stuff. I guess you could say that ultimately that's the motivation, but if your promotion ad in the short term is trying to change an attitude or change your perspective, then you're really building a longer term strategy to get them to buy something. And sometimes it takes time if you're trying to change attitudes and perceptions. And again, we usually have campaigns that are trying to accomplish more than one thing at the same time. So we try to motivate, entertain, we reward people, we recognize them for things they've done or for being our customer. We have promotions that catch us in the moment, like point of purchase sales to get your attention, bring you into the fold of our group of customers. That might be through memberships or whatever. We try to educate so that we can change or enhance an attitude, perception, or belief. Remember that attitudes are easier, perceptions are a little more difficult, and beliefs are hard to change. I've got a couple ads around perception in a minute. And we can reinforce or dilute the immediate above. In other words, we can strengthen an attitude or perception, or we can try to dilute it. And again, I would repeat that in the majority of cases, there's a multitude of things we're trying to accomplish in a campaign. And we only view one ad at a time, but we should be looking at the entire campaign to see what's going on. So, what do we got working here? Well, we had a whole chapter on motivation, and some ad campaigns just focus on motivation as a consequence of the nature of their product and the nature of their customer. Nike, I would say 80+% of their ads are all about motivation to get you off the couch and actualize what it is you're thinking about as far as getting in shape or participating in a sport or whatever the case may be. I like this ad that I found on perception because they're trying to change not an attitude, they're trying to change a perception of how a group of people see, in this case at least, somebody sort of color, and to say, hey, I'm not what you think I am. I'm more than that. So again, I throw this in to repeat what I did in a couple of earlier slides about visualize the process that you go through in a holistic perspective. Try to identify all the different factors that are at play. And ultimately, we want to get into the consumer's head. We want to influence what they see, how they see it, by these techniques that we utilize given our understanding of the customer. Now, the third and fourth questions were, what are appropriate venues to use and what are appropriate messages that we can use? And that's all about what the promotions class is about. But first, you have to have an understanding of consumer behavior. So, when you do your next presentations, keep these things in mind. You're given a chapter. What is that chapter's contribution to this whole process? How does it play into it? Some of the topics I think are reference groups and word of mouth. Why are reference groups important? And strategically, how do we influence reference groups, or how can we leverage our knowledge of reference groups, which is an extension of who's my customer and understanding your customer? How can we leverage that into our promotions? Family and social standing, same thing. The influence of culture on certain behavior. Some ads have a cultural theme in order to resonate with an intended target audience. So, think about it. And I want to see a better job next time, because I'll be far more critical on how I grade you around your next presentations.